Hello students, here is a quick review for exam 3. Remember that this is for students who have completed the study and now require a greater focus to do good on the exam. So here we go. Number 1, how to calculate pressure. So here's an example. The mass of the fetus is given 2.9 kilogram. The area of the bladder is given as 80 centimeters square, and you are asked to calculate the pressure in millimeters of mercury. So pressure is force by area. So we need to find the force first, and force is the weight of the fetus, and that would be mg. Right? Force or weight is mass times acceleration due to gravity. So you see the mass there times acceleration due to gravity. So 2.9 kilogram is the mass, and we know the acceleration due to gravity is 9.81 meter per second squared. So when you do the calculations, you get the force. Next, you have to divide it by the area. But the area is in the wrong units. We have to change centimeter square into meter square. And because 1 meter is 100 centimeter, you got to multiply it twice because it's centimeter square. Now when you do that, you get 80 times 10 to the negative 4 meters squared. And then finally, since we have the force and we have the area, divide them. Be careful. And then you get it in pascals. 3560 pascals. And then we need to change it into millimeters of mercury. The conversion is 1 millimeter of mercury is 133 or 133.3 pascals. Whatever is given. So do the conversion and you get the answer in millimeters of mercury. That's how you do that. Okay, number 2. If a particle is moving in a magnetic field, a force acts on it. This force is given by the formula QVB sine theta. Q is the charge, V is the velocity or speed, B is the strength of the magnetic field, and theta is the angle between the velocity and the magnetic field. So all of these quantities will be given. You got to be careful because usually charge being small is given in microcoulombs. Okay, so you got to change that into coulombs. 1 micro is 10 to the negative 6. Everything else is okay. They're just given. You got to plug it into this. That's it, which I've done here. But you can see that the 2 micro is written as 2 times 10 to the negative 6. Again, because we need to change the micro into coulombs. And then, so Q, velocity, strength of the magnetic field, sine of the angle. Be careful when you take the sine of the angle, your calculator must be in degrees, not in radians. When you do the math, you get 0.03 newtons. Number 3, Doppler effect. First of all, you need to know what Doppler effect is. It is the change in frequency, perceived change in frequency, because of the motion of the source or the observer. So 2 things can move, either the source or the observer. Now when you read the question, usually one of them will be at rest. If the source is at rest, then V sub S is 0. If the observer is at rest, then V sub O is 0. So read that. This is the formula. You need to determine if you're going to use plus or minus. And that depends on how the source is moving. So as an example, if the observer is at rest, okay, so you got VO, V sub O is 0. And then let's say that the source is moving away. Source moving away. You see that? If the source is moving away from the observer, then the frequency is going to decrease. If the frequency must decrease, then you have to put a plus in the denominator. See? So when the source is moving away, use a plus in the denominator. On the other hand, if the source is moving towards, use the minus in the denominator. Now in my example, the source is moving away, so I'm going to use a plus. We're given the source velocity, the actual frequency of the source, and the speed of sound. Now notice that since this is 0, there's nothing there, okay? So there's nothing there, that is 0. And the denominator, you have a plus because it's moving away. All right, so put that, calculate carefully, you get 472.2, which is, of course, less than 500. So that's because it's moving away. If it were moving towards, then this number that you get here should be bigger than here, okay? So that's number 3. Number 4, intensity of sound. This is the formula. Beta in decibels is 10 log I by I naught. Now you do know that I naught is always 10 raised to negative 12. That is the smallest intensity that human beings can perceive. So that's 10 to the negative 12. So here's a special problem. You have two sources and each one is producing 70 decibels. Question is, what is their combined intensity? Like if you have both the sources, what's the total intensity? Now it is not 2 times 70. It is not 140 decibels. You cannot do that. There are 2 steps here. First, you'll have to change the decibels into watt per meter square. For that, use the formula given above. You're given it 70. So, excuse me. So 70 is 10 log I by I naught. Now divide both sides by 10. So that gives 70 by 10. 70 by 10 is equal to log I by I naught. Okay? 70 by 10 is 7. So the left side is 7. Not done anything on the right side. And then is the important part. To get rid of the log, all you got to do is put 10 raised to 7 on the other side. So here, if you put a 10 raised to, you can get rid of the log. That's what you do. So once you do that, cross multiply. And then, or rather multiply with I naught on both sides. So you get it as I naught times 10 raised to 7. And remember that I naught is 10 to the negative 12. So when you put that, you see it's 10 to the negative 5 because 12 minus 7 is 5. And then you put the sign of the bigger number. So now that we got the intensity of one source in watt per meter squared, for the 2 sources, you just multiply by 2. So you got 2 times 10 to the negative 5. And then change it into decibels. I know, this is a process. So that's second step. Once again, use the formula. This time it's easier because you're looking for beta in decibels. You got the I as 10 to the negative 5, didn't we? Yep. You have it as 10 to the negative 5 here. And so when you do the math, here you get 2 times 10 to the 7. And put it into the calculator. Take the log of 2 times 10 raised to 7. You will get it as 7.3010. Be careful, there are two log buttons on the calculator. Be careful to use the log and not the natural log. The other one will be usually ln. Don't use that. Okay, so when you do 10 times this, that's easy, that's 73.01 decibel. So one source was 70 decibels, but two sources combined is only 73 decibels. Next is the equation of continuity, where you have two tubes connected. One is bigger than the other. And we know that the quantity of liquid flowing through both has to be the same. And the quantity of flow, or the rate of flow in 1 second, is given by A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2, where A is the area of cross section. A1 for the bigger one and A2 for the smaller one. And for a circle, the area is pi r squared. So just keep that in mind. Use the radius. Please change it into meter if it's given in centimeter. Find the areas. And probably you're going to be given one of the velocities and you have to find the other one. So that's easy. Once you get A1, B1, do the math. Okay, you see there are 15 points for match the following, and these are the topics. You have to know the difference between parallel circuits and series circuits. The important difference is that in a parallel circuit, the voltages are the same, but in a series circuit, the currents are the same. Capacitors store electrical energy in the form of an electric field. Inductors store electrical energy in the form of a magnetic field. So you see the difference? Both store electrical energy, but capacitors store it as an electric field. Inductors store it as a magnetic field. What does a transformer do? It changes voltages. It can either increase or decrease voltages. What is the difference between a generator and a motor? A generator changes mechanical energy into electrical energy. So you get electricity by moving something, by rotating something. The motor is exactly the opposite. It changes electrical energy into mechanical energy. So you get rotation using electricity. Then you have a circuit breaker and a fuse. Both are protective devices. But the important difference is that the fuse just breaks. It gets heated up and melts. It cannot be reset. A circuit breaker can be reset. You just have to flip the switch, in a circuit breaker. All right, and then you have to know the units of potential. Electric potential, the unit is volt. What's the unit of current? Ampere. What is the unit of resistance? Ohm. So volt, ampere, and ohm. Then you have to certainly know the difference between MRI and fMRI. So fMRI is particularly used to study or to get the image of the brain. And both of them use magnetic resonance imaging. So read on that. Of course, you have to know what ultrasound is. Ultrasound is sound of frequencies more than 20,000 hertz or 20 kilohertz. Okay, that's ultrasound. Very safe, but very useful to study the human body, especially during pregnancy and even other cases. Then you have to know these two intensities. 0 decibel, which is 10 to the negative 12 watt per meter squared, is the smallest intensity that can be perceived by a human being. Smallest intensity. It's called the threshold of hearing. And 120 decibel is the threshold of pain. So 120 and above will cause pain. and even damage. Okay, Doppler effect, we spoke about that. It is the perceived change in frequency because of the motion of the source or the observer, or both. Then you have to know what interference is. Interference is when two sources of sound or two waves of sound come together. And if you remember what you did in the lab, at certain points the sound becomes maximum. At certain other points, it cancels out and becomes a minimum. So that is interference. So those are the topics for master following. Here is an electrical circuit. This is one of the problems. You have to recognize that these two resistances, 4 ohms and 4 ohms, are connected in parallel, while the 3 ohms is connected in series. So that's what you have to know. So how do you calculate the total of these 3 resistances? First, you have to find the total of these two because they are in parallel. You have to use the formula 1 over R is 1 over 4 plus 1 over 4, which is 2 over 4. And then you have to flip both sides because it's 1 over R. That will give you R over 1, which I have not written because R over 1 is R. And then flip this side, so it's 4 over 2, which is 2. Now, there's an easy thing. If these two are equal and they are in parallel, then you just take half of it. That's easy. So that's why I wrote 2 here. So these two together is 2. And then you got 3. And because this combination is in series with this, you just add them. So the total resistance is 5 ohms. Hope that's clear. Then here are some formulas on the exam. Power is the product of voltage and current. All right. Density is mass by volume. Density is mass divided by volume. And then I'm working out a problem because it's on the exam. If the blood pressure is given as 160 over 90 and the area of an artery is given in centimeters squared and you're asked to find the maximum force. The maximum force on the artery. First of all, you have to change since you're looking for maximum, you take the upper one, which is 160, right? 160. Forget about the lower. You're looking for maximum. So change the 160 millimeter into pascals using this conversion. Yeah, you write it this way because you want the millimeters to cancel out and you will get it in pascals. Once you get it in pascals, use the formula force is pressure times area. But area is in centimeters squared. We did that once before. You got to change it into meter square, which is what I've done here. And you get the maximum force as 4.25 Newton. Hope that makes sense. And that's all I had to give you. So this is not all of it, but this is the majority of the exam, major part of the exam. And if you have been doing the lab and you took the quiz and you worked out the problem set and you did the homework. Now go back, look at the homework. There are many questions taken from the homework and then you should be good. Thank you and wish you all the best.